Let's bring in Makram Rabah, assistant professor at the American University of Beirut. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Makram. Your reaction to good evening. Your reaction to the developments of the last couple of hours. You're in Beirut. Presumably, you felt and heard those explosions.
Well, first to begin, I don't think only the residents of Beirut did feel this explosion. This explosion was so immense and multiple in a way that anyone who was around Beirut even got to it. First of all, this is a major development, regardless if Hassan Nasrallah or any of his senior leadership have been killed in the strike, the immense destruction as well as the location. Since the beginning of the conflict, Israel have used more surgical devices, and they have gone after discrete apartment buildings. Here, we see, first of all, that they have recognized that this is the Hezbollah HQ. So the Hezbollah headquarters, which most probably contains high-ranking senior members, and it's not a coincidence that this is a civilian building, which is a couple of blocks away from one of the biggest hospitals operated by Hezbollah, which leads us to assume that there's an elaborate network of tunnels and all of this, given the way that usually these bunker busters are used. So whatever happens, this is actually a clear declaration which goes against the declaration of the Israeli army that the initial objective of this campaign is not to return the civilian population of the north of Israel, but rather this is a clear message that ultimately Israel wants to destroy the entire military infrastructure of Hezbollah. And if for any reason they were able to kill Nasrallah, they might be able to achieve this.
Does this attack suggest that perhaps at the moment Israel feels that it has the upper hand against Hezbollah, and while it has, so to speak, its foot on its throat, then it has no intention whatsoever of stepping back?
Well, we can safely assume that given what had happened on October 7 and the way that Israel have dealt with Hamas, I think going after Nasrallah right into Lebanon without actually implicating your troops in a land invasion is a direct emphasis on what you just mentioned, meaning that the Israelis have their knife on the throat of Hezbollah, and certainly none of the international community, be it France or even the Biden administration, can actually stop them for many reasons. First of all, however we want to look at it, at the end of the day, Hezbollah were the people who declared who opened the fight on October 8th. And this is not an accusation, but rather this is a statement of Hassan Nasrallah. So basically, Nasrallah and Hezbollah and Iran, by association, they bit off something they could not chew. And ultimately now, this is what will happen. The Israelis will not stop until they can force Hezbollah into submission, or basically to make it so weak that the Lebanese themselves, including those who claim to be supporting Hezbollah, will simply say, enough, we cannot handle this. The economic and the political situation requires you to stop the fight.
Debates must be taking place, of course, within Hezbollah about how the group responds. Those will have been taking place over the last couple of weeks. And that is the big question, isn't it? Are you surprised that given all these attacks that we've seen since those exploding pagers last week, there hasn't been more of a response?
Well, sir, I am not someone who is actually a supporter or even actually someone who is admires the so-called axis of resistance technological capacity. And I know for a fact that this fact that we continue on hearing that they have not yet used their more sophisticated weapons, what you see is what you get with Iran and its militias. Their ability to really hurt Israel is minimal. The only way that Hezbollah and Iran can hurt Israel is politically by basically using public opinion against against the government of Israel. At the moment, I don't think that anyone in any capacity is willing to stand in the corner of Iran and Hezbollah. And it's not a coincidence that Iran itself has, in a way, publicly abandoned Hezbollah, and they said this is a Hezbollah fight, and we are no longer interested in jumping in. At the end of the day, here what we are seeing is a clear departure from earlier confrontations between Israel and Lebanon, and particularly the PLO or even the Hezbollah in the 2006 war.
And when it comes to those discussions that will be taking place at the United Nations General Assembly in New York. There was great optimism just a couple of days ago that there may well be a ceasefire. It turns out that what the Israelis have been saying in private and in public are very different. Do you feel now that there will be a hardening, perhaps, of the American position?
Well, the American position is very clear. While they say publicly that they want a 21-day ceasefire, they nevertheless dispensed $8.7 billion of arms to Israel. So I think the double messaging here is saying that they're actually sending a clear message to Hezbollah and to Iran that while you have the luxury of actually talking about a ceasefire, it has to happen now. So regardless if Hezbollah's Secretary General was killed or his cousin or any of the high-ranking members, this might be a silver lining at the end of the day for them to actually force the hand of Hezbollah to actually declare a ceasefire. And I believe that this ceasefire can ultimately lead to somewhere if the Americans are serious. And at the same time, Hezbollah realizes that this is not a way for them to actually resurface, but rather they need to think about what will happen internally in Lebanon. Because as a Lebanese citizen, sir, I am not actually concerned about the fight with Israel. What will happen next? What will happen to the government, and who will pay the money for the reconstruction of the South? And will these people who are displaced go back to their homes, or will this displacement become permanent?
Well, look, we thank you very much indeed for joining us, Makram. Appreciate you having come on NewsHour on such an evening. Thank you.